Hi, I am Courtney from Happy Sleeping Baby, and you're probably wondering why I speak English. And the reason is I'm an American living in Sweden. So if you reach out to me and we connect, feel free to speak Swedish because I do understand. I am just not great responding back in Swedish. So anyways, that's why I'm speaking English. And I welcome you today because today I'm going to talk with you about happy sleep basics. I have just completed my book, Happy Sleeping Baby, Your Guide for Sleep Success. And basically, I'm going to step you through some of the tidbits from chapter 1 and chapter 2. So there is a lot of information in this book. I don't expect everyone to use every single bit in here because obviously every person's sleep journey is a little bit different. But like I said, I'm going to guide you through some of the little bits of chapter 1 and 2, and that's basically setting up for sleep. So understanding sleep and the things that you have to have in place so that your little one can sleep well. So I'm going to share with you a little presentation. All right, so let's talk about your happy sleeping baby. So first off, I want to just explain a little bit about why I do what I do. And so that's me and my little one. She was born and it was amazing, but at the same time, we had a bit of a rough go. So when I had her, I had actually just moved to Sweden. So I was still trying to figure out a language and a culture, and having a baby on top of that was quite an experience. And I thought I knew quite a bit about sleep deprivation. I had been a professional athlete. I'd actually served some time shortly in the military. So I kind of knew what sleep deprivation was all about until I had Taylor. And then I was in a whole different category of sleep deprivation. So basically, in this photo, there's usually those wonderful sleeping baby newborn photo shoots, and she just wasn't one of those. She was awake almost constantly. It seemed like it, at least at the time. And we had to have a hair dryer running in the background. I was barely even able to put her down for this because she would really fuss and cry. So it was a rough beginning. Now, fast forward 6 months later, we actually found out that she had a milk protein and peanut allergy. And so that was causing her general fussiness and uncomfortable, basically overall uncomfortableness. So we figured that out finally. And then, 6 months in, you realize that she doesn't even know how to lay down in a bed. She didn't know how to fall asleep. So then that started my journey into figuring out how to help her sleep. So I kind of Googled everything that I could. There was not as much information as there is now online, but at the same time, I almost find that now it's just overwhelming with information. So I hope today I can clarify some things and some bits for you to help you on your sleep journey. So basically, I learned as much as I could. I actually worked with a sleep consultant myself, and then I went for a sleep consultant education. And I realized at that time, a lot of it was for me, actually, because I still wanted to figure out more of my daughter's sleep and how certain things weren't working at that time. And then I realized how many parents needed to know more of this information. So that's why I do what I do now. All right, so first things first, understanding how babies sleep. Now, we go through different cycles of sleep, and everything that we do during the day actually affects sleep. So everything you do during the day will affect your nighttime sleep or your baby's sleep. So let's go into what exactly sleep is. So I'd like you to imagine yourself just kind of laying down, or you can even think about your baby, because we're able to see them go through these stages too. So let's think about either your baby or you. I'll talk about it in terms of you. So I'd like you to think about yourself laying down for sleep at night, right? And you're just laying there, you're maybe thinking about some things, you're just relaxing. So as our bodies relax just a little bit more, we actually go into stage 1 sleep. So we're very, very easily woken at this stage. So you're not asleep yet, but if you were woken up at this time, you would know that, okay, I was just kind of relaxing. Okay, so stage 1. Then we have stage 2. So stage 2 is still a light sleep, but you're going a little bit deeper into that light sleep stage. So if you were woken up during this time, you would know that, okay, I was drifting off to sleep, or I was, just about to fall asleep. So that's stage 2. Stage 2 is also generally when you're trying to put your baby to sleep and you lay them down and they wake back up. So you think they're sleeping, but they are not. So that would be like when they're in stage 2. So if no one wakes any of us up during stage 2 sleep and we keep sleeping, we go into stage 3 and 4. Now, stage 3 and 4 is a very deep, slow wave sleep. And slow wave means that your brain waves are slowing down. So this sleep is very restorative for the body. It is when our immune system repairs and gets that boost so that we're able to fight off any infections. This is when growth hormone is put into the body for little kids. So deep sleep is a very important stage for babies to go through. So during this stage, if you were woken up, you would really know you were sleeping. It would even take you a few minutes to wake up. If you've ever had to wake your baby in this stage, you'll know that it takes them like a little bit of time to kind of like wake up and realize kind of where they are. This is like, a very, very difficult stage to wake people up in generally. So if we continue sleeping during deep sleep, we go into REM sleep. And so this means it's rapid eye movement. So you might see your baby's eyes moving. You might see them make facial expressions. This is when we dream, and we dream in color. So these are the dreams that we remember. This is basically when our brain is filing away all the important stuff that we learned through the day. I should mention, actually, sorry to go back, but in deep sleep, you're going to notice that your baby's really relaxed. Our muscles are turned off during deep sleep. And then when we go into REM, that's when our muscles can kind of function again. So you might see babies move around a little bit, or even we might move around a little bit. So those are the stages of sleep that we go through. Now, all of those 4 stages equal 1 sleeping cycle, and then we repeat those all again. Adults generally sleep for about 60 to 120 minutes, and children sleep for about 30 to 90 minutes. Those can always vary. So you might, normally see 1 sleep cycle for a nap, for example, like around 30 or 90 minutes or so. So adults normally have about 5 or 6 of these cycles through the night. And this is when we wake up feeling our best, is when we actually complete about 5 or 6 of them. And then kids generally have more of them because their sleeping cycles are shorter. So what I normally see, and what a lot of parents come to me for advice on, is that their baby is waking up either 30, 60, or 90 minutes, and they tend to need something to help them to go back to sleep. So what you're seeing is your child repeating 1 sleeping cycle. Now, as you can see in the little chart here, our bodies cycle through this throughout the night. And I should mention a really interesting thing is that we generally get deep sleep in the first half of the night. So that's also why it's really important to go to sleep at a certain time. For babies, it's around 7 p.m. Now, for newborns and up to 4 months, that may look totally different. You may be having them go to sleep at 9 o'clock because they have so many naps throughout the day. So generally about 4 months and above, you want to have that bedtime around 7. And then for adults, now everyone's different, but generally it's about 10 p.m. So what happens is that if we lose that window of time to get that deep sleep, generally our bodies don't always make it up. Unless we're extremely sleep deprived, then obviously our bodies make it up, but we can never make up for lost sleep. Scary as it sounds, it's actually the truth. We can help our bodies repair and recover a little bit, but we never make up for that lost sleep. So that's why it's really important to have an earlier bedtime, both for babies and us adults. Because then actually what happens too is that we go into more of a lighter and REM like cycle of sleeping towards the second half of the night. And then you might also notice that your baby wakes up more often the second half of the night. So That's what's happening there with sleep. And I find that it's really important for parents to understand how we sleep so they can understand their child, like you can understand your child's sleep a lot better too. All right, so figuring out this whole sleep thing. I like to advise parents to use what I call clocks and cues. So clocks, you're going to watch the amount of time that your baby stays awake. Now, within my book, I have example schedules by age, so you can figure out what like awake window your child should need or should have. So clocks, awake time windows. Basically, you know, a newborn should only be awake for about 45 minutes to 1 hour. I sure wish I would have known awake windows a lot sooner within my little daughter's life, because it would have made things a lot easier. Because some babies just don't fall asleep without having certain cues or us helping them fall asleep. I just always assumed babies slept. And if you were like me, you realize that that is not the case. So watching the clock. Then I want you to notice the cues that your baby shows you as to them becoming tired. So babies, generally can stay awake happily for a certain amount of time before you might start noticing them do certain things. A really simple one, obviously, is crankiness. That is a clear sign that you are definitely seeing that awake window close. But other signs can include red around the eyes or red eyebrows. You might see babies pull at their ears. Yawning, I tend not to go with yawning just because we can be yawning at any time of the day, but you might notice that your baby starts yawning a little bit more towards their end of an awake window. So again, babies are all different. So what one baby, might show may be totally different for another one. I've had clients where their baby starts to hum, and that's actually awesome because that's a self-soothing technique for a baby to use, because it gives them a little vibration, and that helps calm their body. I've had other babies show very clear signs of like a sigh. And I know right there, their awake window is closing. So by using clocks and cues, what we're going to do is actually set up your child for a day routine or having a consistent schedule for them. And I'll explain why consistent schedule is very important. So consistent schedule is important because it helps develop your child's natural awake and asleep rhythm within their bodies. So we have throughout the day, our brains produce a chemical, and this chemical kind of builds up in our brain, and it produces what's called sleep pressure. So that sleep pressure is that awake window. So it builds up within that window, and then boom, it is time for your baby to fall asleep, because that chemical needs to be cleared from their brain. So to make it super simple, just follow a simple pattern. It doesn't have to be very to the minute at all, but what you want to do is have a very consistent pattern, such as once your child wakes up, they eat, maybe you play a little bit, you possibly might have a snack again, and then sleeping. So this all depends on your baby's age, obviously, but just having a really consistent pattern like that will help them understand what happens next. So if you're not super into routines, let me explain a little bit as to why routines are really important. I know when I first had my daughter, I'm a very routine person. I'm a very check off the list to do. And I thought, oh, I cannot wait. I'm just going to go with the flow. And that so backfired on me. And I found out later why. So our bodies work on schedules and routines. And the reason why is because it puts less stress on our brain. Now, perfect example of this is that if you woke up in the morning and you had to decide something brand new all the way until lunchtime, you would be exhausted, basically. So our bodies put these simple little routines in place, like we wake up, we go use the bathroom, we, come into the kitchen, and maybe you're doing the exact same thing to get ready for breakfast. So we do those things so that our brain has less stress on it. And we want to do the same thing for your child so that they have less stress on their brain. And it's worked so many times where I've had someone come to me with a really cranky baby, like mama, papa just say like, our baby just never seems happy or satisfied. They're always cranky. And once we start these like simple routines, the baby starts to become a lot happier because they're not constantly thinking, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? They're knowing and understanding that, okay, we eat, we do these certain things, and then we go play for a little bit, and then we go get ready for sleeping. And babies really love that consistency. So the other reason why we like that consistency is because our bodies naturally react to these patterns. So the body will know when it's time to be awake and then know when it's time to be sleeping. And then that helps our bodies fall asleep a lot easier. The other thing on patterns is that it's helpful for what's called metabolic memory. So basically what that means is your body is prepared to eat at certain times of the day. And when our bodies are ready to eat, our brains and bodies produce certain chemicals to help our bodies digest food. So if all these, things are all not in a pattern, our bodies don't know how to react to it. And again, it puts less stress on our brain in general when our bodies know what to expect. So that's just a little tidbit as to why routines are actually pretty important. So let's go on to like setting up an ideal schedule. Now, this is just an example schedule for 2 naps. Now, generally when kids are on 2 naps, they're at an age, it can be anywhere from 8 months to 15 months old that they're on like a 2-nap schedule. Again, it varies by every child, and you kind of have to take some notes and watch how your baby is and how long your baby can stay awake and how to set up your day. So this is an example, again, of a 2-nap schedule. And this child's awake window is anywhere from about 2.5 to 3.5 hours. So you're waking up 6:30 a.m., wake up, breakfast, play. Okay, so you're doing something consistently. Then you're getting ready for a nap. You're always using a routine, which I'll cover in just a second, but you're using a routine. So let's say at 9:30, you know that your baby starts to kind of show their sleepy signs at around that 9:30 mark, and their awake window's closing, and you want to have them sleeping by 10. So you start the nap routine at about 9:30 so that they can fall asleep by 10 o'clock. Then wake up, you go have lunch and play and do all those little simple routines that we talked about, and you get ready for a nap again. So 1:30, getting ready for a nap, and you're having a nap at 2 o'clock. Then going forward, the same thing. You wake up, you eat, you play, get ready for bed. So bedtime routine and then sleeping. Now you always want to have a routine. So whenever you're going to go for a nap or nighttime, you always want to have a routine. And again, that goes back to that consistency, because we want to have that routine kind of ingrained in your child's brain, ingrained in your brain, so that sleep can happen a lot more naturally. So here's just like a sample nap time routine. Again, it's going to vary by your child's age. So you might be having a snack before sleeping. And then I always recommend breaking up, feeding, and then falling asleep. Again, it all depends on the child, but if you're having trouble with multiple wake ups or your child cannot link together their sleeping cycles, you'll want to look at, are they using food to fall asleep? And if that's the case, you want to move the snack before going to sleep. So example in here is having the snack first, and then you're going to go into, either their room. It's calm, it's cool. I'll explain a room environment in just a second, but you want to go in so that it signals their body that it's sleepy time. You might read a book, or you might sing a song, holding your child, singing a song, and maybe singing the same one so they understand that song means sleep, and then putting your child down. Now, I know that's not always how it works and how simple it is. And I'll go into a little bit of that in just a little bit. So bedtime routine would be very similar. So you're feeding at the beginning of the bedtime routine. So we're not associating feeding with sleeping. And then maybe you're having a bath. You don't have to have a bath every night. And what works for your family. then pajamas, diaper, maybe brushing teeth depending on the age, and then again, book or song, and then going into awake or into the bed awake but sleepy. So those are just some examples of sample nap routines and also bedtime routines. Okay, so going into the room, you want to have a room environment that is very similar to being back in the womb. So dark, cool, even though womb isn't cool, but we actually sleep better when our bodies are cooler because our body temperature has to drop to fall asleep. So you want your room to be a little bit cool. You also want white noise or something that can kind of drown out the extra sounds that might be happening in your home. I generally like to use fans, like older fans that have more of like a kind of sound. That's white noise. There's also something called brown noise, which I prefer personally. I think it's a little bit like toned down version of a white noise. But again, use what works for you. And then last, having a sleeping buddy. And of course, this is all age appropriate with using sleeping buddies. You don't want to use a sleeping buddy where it's dangerous, where it might cover their face or anything like that. So please use, your own judgment there. But you want to have these things in place so that it stimulates the womb again. And yes, this is no matter what age, like toddlers, newborns, adults, we want these things in place. Mainly that it's dark, cool, and somewhat quiet. Okay, so moving on there. Now let's see, the going to the sleep part. Now this is definitely like a tricky thing, and I get that. So in my book, I actually cover some different techniques because there isn't one way that fits everybody. And that's what happens when parents get advice and they try it and it doesn't work for their family, and they say, well, that didn't work, nothing works. It's because there isn't one way. And you can even combine some of the techniques that I have in here and combine some of them and make your own little like sleep plan basically. But the going to sleep part is, yes, a little trickier. And what I always recommend is put the things in place that I just talked about, having a simple routine, having bed and nap routines so that your child starts to understand when they actually should be sleeping. So the other thing about going to sleep is it actually depends a lot on your child's temperament. Like what kind of baby is your child? So I have two pictures here, an orchid and a dandelion. Now, kids are different, and maybe you have more of like an orchid child. And an orchid child means that you have to have things in a certain way. The conditions have to be perfect for that child to really be able to fall asleep. Some babies really need that consistent routine to fall asleep. On a personal level, my daughter needed that cue that it was sleepy time. So we had to, cover her with a little blanket. We had to cue her body that it was sleeping time. And then the same thing, like as she grew, she needed her routine to be exactly the same all the time. And, that room environment to be just right. So some babies are orchid babies. They need that same environment all the time or the same routines all the time. Well, other babies are dandelions. Dandelions can thrive in a crack in the sidewalk and it doesn't matter. They can fall asleep in a room full of people. They can adapt really easily no matter what the situation. So what I mean by temperament and how it affects your child's sleep is that some babies need everything in a certain way, while other babies you can see falling asleep in a stroller and having no problem at all sleeping in a stroller, whereas an orchid baby may never fall asleep in a stroller. So just know your child's temperament. And I actually talk a lot about this in my book, on my website, on social media, because I see the difference that temperament makes for children and sleep. And generally, I have a lot of orchid kids coming to me because they need things set up a certain way. So moving on, now making some of these changes, sometimes babies aren't going to like changing the way they fall asleep. They're not going to like maybe being put down if they're being rocked to sleep the whole time or being fed to sleep. So when you make changes, just know that, babies may not be happy with that at first. And it doesn't mean it's a bad change. Sometimes you have to make a change that's in a more positive way of falling asleep. So during this time, you might see your child, show emotions, and generally that is being crankier or maybe crying a little bit. So it's not uncommon to have to make some of these changes and then know that your child may at first be a little bit upset in the very beginning. Now, I don't really promote like the whole cry it out solution, because that's not necessarily like the best way, but it doesn't mean your child won't cry. But again, that goes back to there's different ways to help your child fall asleep. And again, I cover 3 different ways of helping your child fall asleep within my book, and I step you through it. I actually put down the days 1 through 4, you do this, days, 4 and on, you do that. So adjusting to the change and what to expect when you're making changes. Now, self-soothing skills. I don't really agree with putting your child in their crib and then assuming that they're going to learn how to self-soothe. You may have to help them in the beginning. Most likely you're going to have to help them in the beginning. Learn how to help soothe themselves to fall asleep. And it might have to be in the beginning where you're using one way, maybe you're holding them in the beginning, you're putting them down, you're holding your hand close to them, or you're patting their back. So you're moving in a way that helps them learn how to self-soothe. So self-soothing is not just putting your child into their bed, leaving the room and letting them figure it out. Like that is so not the way it is. Eventually they do figure it out, but again, not the best way and not what I really promote. The other thing too with self-soothing is that self-soothing can start during the daytime. So you can actually work on certain skills to help your child learn how to handle certain changes without having to start at nighttime. So the next thing is, like, when you make certain changes, it is a bit of a short-term tolerable stress. Nothing wrong with that. And the reason why there's nothing wrong with it is because of the word short term. It is not an ongoing struggle or an ongoing difficult situation that they're having to deal with. It is a short-term change. Now, I cover stress and what that means and what's okay at certain ages. Any baby 4 months and under, you definitely want to be holding and helping them fall asleep. That is not wrong at all. You will be doing that. But then starting around that 4-month mark, you'll be moving away. And that might mean change for your baby. And it might mean a little bit of, stress is a really strong word. So that's why I say short-term tolerable stress. And I explain what that means in the book. Our babies always have some sort of stress, like learning how to handle stress with self-soothing skills is a positive thing, actually, that we go through in development. And I'll give you like a perfect example of short-term tolerable stress is when babies start preschool or foreschooling. So that is actually a short-term tolerable stress. And it's okay because you're there to help them, like guide them through the change. There's other loving people around to help guide them through the change, and they adapt to it. Another example of short-term stress for us adults is starting a new job, right? So we're going to have to go through these things in life, and we have to learn how to deal with them. But again, let me just point out that it's not just letting your kiddo cry and figure it out. Like, you're helping them through this change. All right, so let's talk about some of those things that might cause that short-term stress. So sleeping props are generally what I'm working with parents, because you're usually helping your child fall asleep, and then that causes them to wake up because they need the same thing to fall asleep again later. Generally, these things are nursing or a bottle, rocking or a pacifier, co-sleeping. And let me just say, these are okay. Like, these are not bad things to do. The only time that I always say, like, that you might want to change things is when no one's sleeping. So when your baby wakes up every 2 hours throughout the night and you have to go rock them to go back to sleep, or you have to nurse them or feed them to sleep. So those are the times when sleeping props need to change for healthier habits. And that's when that whole like times of change will come up, because your child knows how to fall asleep that way. They like falling asleep that way. But it's better and healthier for them to learn how to link their sleeping cycles together so that they're getting a full night of sleep and restful sleep. Okay, so that's just like a short bit of setting up for sleep, a little bit about what I talk about in my book. Now, again, there's a lot of information in the book. You can use it in so many ways. You can use it where you are using it as a sleep training plan. You can use it as you're just working on setting up for sleep. There's also like age and development schedules in the book. So basically what to expect by age. So I have like example schedules set up in the book. I have developmental things that you're going to want to look for. I have a lot of information. so it's all in here. And, you know, sleep is a roller coaster, and you might have it figured out for a little bit, and then all of a sudden everything changes and you have to figure it all out again. And that's why I wrote the book, because you can pick it up at any stage that you're at and use it. So that's just a little bit about that book. And if you're listening and your child's a little bit older, I actually have just written a child's book. It's called The Sleepy Little Bear, and it's a book that, for 3 to 7-year-olds, and we talk about how to fall asleep. So we follow this little bear on his journey to falling asleep. And it's not just about falling asleep, obviously, like we have to do certain things to help our child fall asleep, but this is helping your child learn how to breathe, relax their body, and get ready for sleep. So I have both of those books at happysleepingbaby.com. It's under the books tab. And after watching the seminar, you get 15% off with UBB 15. And I will even apply that to my book support calls. So my book support calls are if you're using my book and you have some questions or you need help guiding through a sleep training plan, then you're able to book a sleep support call and we can work that way. I also have a podcast that I've done with Rulavan, and I also work with two apps called Baby Naps and also Parvel. So if you haven't heard of me from those, hopefully you can get some good information from this seminar and also at happysleepingbaby.com. All right, thanks for joining.